Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going after something that honestly strikes fear into the hearts of even the most seasoned poker players out there. We are talking about post-flop multi-way strategy. I mean, if you've ever found yourself 3 ways to a flop and you're just completely paralyzed about whether to bet, check, or maybe just walk away from the table entirely, look, you are absolutely not alone. Multi-way pots are notoriously overwhelming, but today we're diving into some incredibly fresh insight straight from Raise Your Edge. We're going to deconstruct this whole beast and really simplify it down into actionable, high-impact strategies.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's the roadmap for how we're going to break this all down. First up, the multi-way problem. Then, core post-flop concepts. After that, we'll do a hand analysis on King, Queen, 9, followed by a step-by-step mastery plan. And finally, adjusting for opponents. All right, starting with part 1, the multi-way problem. We really need to talk about why these spots feel so incredibly difficult. First off, it's super important to validate that frustration you're probably feeling, because the general standard of play in multi-way pots across the board is pretty poor. And the reason? The math is just massive. I mean, literally massive. When you try to run a solver for a multi-way spot, the game trees just absolutely explode. We're talking a single simulation taking up 100 to 120 gigabytes of space. Unless you've got some giant supercomputer or a rented server with an insane amount of RAM, solving these spots on a normal everyday PC is basically impossible. But here is the beautiful part, and how this actually turns into an amazing opportunity for us. Because the math is that hard to solve, 99% of players, and yes, I mean even those tough regulars you're facing, are just completely lost in like 98 out of 100 possible multi-way scenarios. Seriously. And honestly, that is incredibly liberating. It means you don't need to play perfectly to crush these games. You literally just need a slight edge. If your strategy is even just a tiny bit more grounded in theory than the guy sitting next to you, you win. It really is that simple. Moving right into section 2, core post-flop concepts. We're going to shift our focus away from exact math and look at some broad logical heuristics. Since we obviously can't rely on perfect solver math for every single spot, we have to look at the big picture. And let's start with a foundational concept that is absolutely crucial in multi-way pots, the protection bet. Now, a lot of times we aren't betting hands purely for value or just as a pure bluff. We're actually betting to deny equity. Think about it like this. Say you have a low pair on the flop, and the big blind has a hand like ace-6 offsuit. Between them and the other player in the hand, they might have something like 5-6 or 7 outs against you. That adds up to a 20 to 30% equity share in the pot. So betting to force them to fold out that raw equity, that's hugely valuable, even when your own hand is pretty marginal. So what do these broad heuristics actually look like when you're at the table? Let's just quickly run through the core ones advocated by Raise Your Edge. First, you want to bet your low pairs, especially when they have backdoor flush draws, when you need 2 running cards of that suit to hit. On the flip side, and this sounds a bit backwards, you often want to check back your weak top pairs for pot control. Also, you absolutely must mix in checks with your strong ace-high flush draws. That protects your checking range. You also want to bet the strong hands that can comfortably play for stacks, like your top 2 pairs or really strong top pairs. And maybe the biggest takeaway? Avoid over-bluffing on the flop. If you're out there betting every single draw, your range on later streets is going to be incredibly weak and super easy to exploit. All right, section 3, hand analysis. Let's actually anchor all this theory with a specific scenario on a King, Queen, 9 suited board. Okay, so let's set the scene so you can really visualize this. We're playing around 40 to 45 big blinds deep, effective. The hijack opens, we call on the button, and the big blind defends. The flop comes down King, Queen, 9 suited. So there is a flush draw out there. The big blind checks, the hijack checks, and now the action is on us, sitting on the button. So what exactly is our overall strategy here? Well, the theory tells us we need a highly balanced approach in this specific spot. Basically, we are betting a small, 1/3 pot sizing exactly 50% of the time, and we're checking back the other 50% of the time. Super balanced. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the actual composition of those ranges. Take a close look at what we're supposed to bet. You've got Queen Jack, Queen 10, King Queen, but then pocket deuces through 5s. Specifically when they have a backdoor diamond draw. That feels weird, right? But then look at what we're checking. We are checking back our massive ace-high flush draws, our ace-10s, and our weaker King X hands. Why in the world would we do that? It's all about range protection. Imagine an ace or a jack hits on the turn.
If you had already bet all your strong draws on the flop, you'd have zero bluffs left and a completely terrible range on those specific runouts. By betting those weird low pocket pairs with backdoors on the flop, you're actually giving yourself those random, totally necessary bluffs that can fold out higher cards later.
So let's progress the hand. Say we go ahead and bet our 1/3 sizing and the big blind calls. The turn card comes off as the 6 of spades. The board is definitely getting a bit more dicey now, and the action is checked to us once again. So here is the million-dollar question for you. Do we keep bluffing those low pocket pairs on the turn? I mean, it feels completely unnatural, doesn't it? You're sitting there with pocket threes on a king, queen, 9, 6 board. Your gut instinct is probably screaming at you to just give up.
But actually, theory dictates we keep applying the pressure. The correct move here is to size up and bet 2/3 of the pot. By continuing to barrel with these low pairs, the deuces through fives, you're putting an immense amount of pressure on your opponent's marginal made hands. Think about it from their perspective. They have a hand like king 8. They're facing a chunky 2/3 pot bet on the turn, and it's coming from a range that still has 2 pairs, sets, and straights in it. It's a hugely uncomfortable spot for them, and they are very often forced to just fold their top pair. That is massive fold equity for us. Let's move to section 4, the step-by-step mastery plan, because you need a way to study this without going completely insane. Seriously, how do you actually learn to do this stuff without keeping a supercomputer in your backpack? The key is following this simple 4-step plan from Razor Edge. Step 1, just grasp the general heuristics and logic. Really understand the why behind things like a protection bet. Step 2, start grouping your hands into broad bet versus check categories. You shouldn't be thinking, I need to bet ace-10 exactly 45% of the time. Instead think, okay, ace-10 is a hand I mix between betting and checking. Step 3, write concise, simplified notes. A perfect note looks something like this. On king-queen 9, bluff low pairs with backdoors, check back ace-high flush draws. Short, sweet, to the point. And finally, step 4, apply this selectively at the tables without overthinking it. If you bet a hand 80% of the time and the solver says 70%, who cares? You are already miles ahead of the competition just by understanding the broad strokes. And this brilliantly illustrates why we need Section 5, adjusting for opponents. Because at the end of the day, theory is great, but we are playing against actual human beings. Everything we just covered is deeply rooted in theoretical balance, but reality check, we have to adapt. When you're up against competent, thinking regulars, yeah, you want to lean into the balanced strategies we just talked about. You actually need to bluff those low pairs to apply pressure, because a good reg is fully capable of folding a weak top pair like king 8. But what about a recreational player, a classic calling station? Do not overthink it. Throw those complex bluffs right out the window. A recreational player isn't sitting there thinking about your range advantage. They see a king in their hand and they are calling you all the way down to the river. So against them, skip the fancy stuff. Go straight for value. Bet your obvious flush draws, bet your strong value hands, and please do not try to bluff them off top pair with your pocket threes. I really want to leave you with this incredibly liberating thought directly from the Raise Your Edge materials. Just keep in mind, sometimes you bet, sometimes you don't, and that's totally enough. Multiway pots do not have to be this terrifying nightmare of exact frequencies and gigabytes of solver data. By just grasping the big picture, grouping your hands logically, and knowing when to apply pressure versus when to just play for pure value, you're taking a spot where 99% of players are completely lost and you're turning it into your greatest weapon. So next time you go 3 ways to a flop, ask yourself, are your bluffs actually protecting your range, or are you just blindly clicking buttons? Keep learning, keep simplifying, and we will see you in the next one.